went to church the next Sunday, and they made an announcement saying that there's, I think, 4 or 5 people that would like to start a study group around the book called A Course in Miracles if anybody's interested. I just knew, it just spoke to me. It was the best that I'd heard in Hinduism and Buddhism and Christianity, I guess, kind of all rolled into one capsule. And that was in 1983. And I've been studying it daily ever since. A Course is a very unique book. It wasn't really authored, it was scribed. And it is written in a Christian language, but its theology, its philosophy, if you will, is more Eastern. It speaks of the dream, the Maya. So it calls this world an illusion. You're going to find its theology, philosophy, its general theme is very, very Eastern. It's also based in psychology. Some have called it a spiritual psychotherapy. The Course says that all healing is psychotherapy because all healing really has to take place in the mind. Again, things that seem to be wrong with our body, things that seem to be wrong with our emotions, things that seem to be wrong with our intellect are really just symptoms. The real problem is in mind. So it's a spiritual psychotherapy. I probably didn't tell anybody I was reading the Course for the first 8, 9 years. And not like I was trying to keep it a secret, it just like, it never seemed appropriate. You know, the Course says that sickness is a defense against the truth.
Missed that lesson.
Our whole body is a defense against the truth. You know, we're not bodies. We're eternal, limitless, changeless beings. And there's only one of us. You know, that's who I really am. And that can't be hurt, can't be offended, can't be changed in any way. My belief is there is only one Spirit. And another blasphemous statement, if you'll allow me, is that in truth we're all the Holy Spirit. There is only one. We are the Holy Spirit. Course doesn't tell you that right away, but it's in there. You begin to realize what the Course says is true. The Course says, teach only love, for that is what you are. Love is not an emotion, even though it's experienced that way at first. But the more we get rid of its opposite, which is fear, beliefs that aren't true, then love is just there. The Course says we don't have to seek for love. It's always there. We just have to seek for the barriers we built against it. And what I learned through my Hindu years, my Buddhist years, it's about giving up attachment. And when I got to the Course, I realized what attachment is. As soon as I give anything a meaning, I'm attached. No, it has a meaning for me. I'm attached. For me to truly become unattached, what I have to do is give up my meaning that I think anything has. And the only way I can do that is to say, okay, I don't know what it means. Spirit, tell me. Now we're back to what, as you said, is one of the main themes of the Course, is listening to Spirit.
Reverend Tony Senf holds among his many gifts the ability to explain to newcomers the globally studied spiritual text called A Course in Miracles. Tony, as he prefers to be called, has crossed many spiritual bridges, from studies at a Baptist seminary to an intense pursuit of metaphysics to an even greater pursuit over the past 22 years of A Course in Miracles. Welcome to Souljourns. This interview was recorded in Cleveland Heights, Ohio in January 2011.
Tony, it's an absolute delight to be able to have this opportunity to talk to you today. I've wanted to do this for a long time. I don't know where to begin because I want you to talk about A Course in Miracles, which is virtually unknown by most people in the world and misunderstood by many who know it. But I also want you to talk about your journey, your life, your preparation for to be an ordained minister from your Baptist roots and other roots I'm not even sure of yet. Let's just begin by saying, right off the top, as a appetizer, why the Course in Miracles is so important in your view for people to see as a way to approach their spiritual understanding.
It's my belief that the Course gets to the root cause of it all. Most of our life is spent dealing in symptoms as opposed to the cause. And I believe that the Course gets to the source, which is our thoughts, our thinking, that is all in mind.
And if I were to ask you to talk to me as, my name is Ted Henry, I come from Durban, Ohio, I have never heard of A Course in Miracles, but somebody told me I'd be wise to try to understand it. knowing what you know about my level of understanding, how would you describe it?
I would probably first ask you what your spiritual background is.
Okay, I was raised Catholic, conventional Christian, could be a conventional Muslim, Hindu, or Jew.
Yes, could be any of those. But if your background is more Christian, what I would say is the language you're going to be very familiar with, because it's written in a Christian language. However, the distinctions are going to be different for the words that you read. You're going to read Jesus, you're going to read Christ, you're going to read forgiveness, you're going to read heaven, but they don't mean what you thought they meant or what they meant in your Christian tradition. But they will be terms you're familiar with. I would also tell you that A Course is a very unique book. It wasn't really authored, it was scribed. And it is written in a Christian language, but its theology, its philosophy, if you will, is more Eastern. It speaks of the dream, the Maya, if you will, the realm of samsara. So it calls this world an illusion. You're going to find its theology, philosophy, its general theme is very, very Eastern. It's also based in psychology. Some have called it a spiritual psychotherapy. The Course says that all healing is psychotherapy because all healing really has to take place in the mind. It's where real healing takes place. Again, things that seem to be wrong with our body, things that seem to be wrong with our emotions, things that seem to be wrong with our intellect are really just symptoms. The real problem is in mind. So it's a spiritual psychotherapy. It's written in a free verse, iambic pentameter much of the time, very, very poetic. You'll even find in the last half of the lessons that the titles will either have 10 and later on 20 and 30 syllables in them, each title. Very, very interesting book in the way it's put together. So it's psychologically put together in a psychological foundation. It's also a training program. It tells you that. It's a program in mind training. Basically what it's going to get you to do is to learn how to think differently, how to think more like God, how to think more loving thoughts, which is really beautiful. So it's a Christian terminology, Eastern theology, philosophy, in a spiritual psychotherapy that's a self-training course. As someone once said, there's probably something in the Course to offend almost anyone.
I like the fact that its original language is English. Finally, we have a text in English that can help us not have to worry about false translations.
Yes, it does come from the source. Again, it kind of gets back to the source. I think I heard that Helen Schuckman made the comment, finally a spirituality for intellectuals. And I think that's what scares a lot of people away. They think it's a very intellectual book. It is a different read. It's written in a kind of a different meter, in a different language, so to speak. And it gets a little bit difficult that way. But once you get the basic understanding of the Course, it's as the Course itself says. It's very simple.
Let me throw a tough one at you right off the bat. Intellectuals may be attracted to text of this nature, but they run screaming and howling at anything that's channeled. And yet you say this is scribed. So split hairs. Define what you mean by scribed.
Well, it is channeled material, scribed material, which I myself never really had much to do with. I do believe they're scribed in material, but I think the source of the scribing can be just as off base as anything else. Just because it's scribed doesn't make it spiritual, and I think that's what a lot of people think. When I found out that it was a scribed piece, that Helen Schuckman, who was a professor of psychology at a very prestigious university, and was herself very timid about people finding out she'd heard a voice. She even said that it was something that was a voice that was very compassionate and very understanding, and there's some great works that tell the story of it. But as I found out it was scribed and she wrote this down, I'll have to admit I started reading it with some trepidation, but the more you read it, the more it doesn't matter to me whether it was scribed or not. It's the message, and it supposedly is the voice of Jesus that was speaking to Helen, which was another problem for Helen, because not only was she a psychologist, she was a professed atheistic Jew, and now she's taking dictation from Jesus. So I know it had to be quite confusing for her. But after a while, you get to know this voice, and if it is Jesus, if it is this, I'll say historical Jesus, only meaning he lived 2,000 years ago. I don't think it's the historical Jesus we were taught was Jesus. But whoever it is, if it was Jesus, it's a beautiful soul with a beautiful message that teaches people how to find peace and love and joy in their life.
You said sometimes the language doesn't purport to mean what you think it means because of your understanding of various words and definitions.
Yes.
I have people who say, but Ted, that's blasphemy, that's heresy. How do you reconcile that?
Well, it's blasphemy within their belief system, and I get that. Jesus, when he was on earth, was accused of the same thing. Blasphemy, heresy. You know, him saying, I and my Father are one was total heresy, total blasphemy back then.
Whereas many are raised to expect to find God outside there somewhere, not inside here where I am.
Yes, not inside. And the Course makes a distinction too. It doesn't mean inside your body. But, you know, a lot of times we think, when we say inside, we think of this fleshy thing that we got called a body, and we think it's in there. And the Course says, no, it's in your mind. It's in your mind. After you read the Course Law, you find some things that are a little disturbing to the traditional way of thinking. For example, the Course really teaches that your mind is not in your body, but just the opposite. Your body's in your mind. So this is where we find God. This is where we find Spirit is in mind.
You talked about an initial reluctance to pursue it with great vigor, and yet obviously you overcame that. And I've heard you say, when you give your classes on Tuesday nights not so long ago, that it's the most powerful teaching you've ever come across. That's saying a lot.
Yes, it is. I started off as a Baptist seminary student, and fundamentalism, you know, hellfire, brimstone, and went from there into the Navy. And it was there I started reading some metaphysical work, and I remember the very first one I read was Jonathan Livingston Seagull. That just got me thinking, wait a minute, this doesn't fit, you know. And when I was in seminary even, I would ask questions I didn't have answers to, at least not to satisfy me. And many times their answer was, well, you're not supposed to know that yet, you'll know when you get to heaven. And that just didn't set with me real well. So I left seminary after about 2.5, 3 years with a lot of questions, but still the only faith I knew. So when I started reading some other work, it seemed a little strange. I went from there, long story short, from there into Hinduism, and studied yoga and Hinduism for about 4 or 5 years when I was in the Navy. After I got out of the Navy, I started studying Shaolin. There was a Shaolin master, one of the 5 Shaolin masters outside of China, that I was just so fortunate to find and study under, and I studied Buddhism with him as I was studying Shaolin. And did that for a couple of years, and found a lot of answers in Buddhism, as I had found a lot of answers in Hinduism. Then I went from there to, and I guess it's really what I was all along, to something I still stick to, which I call Tonyism. And I just gleaned from what I had studied, and I came to the conclusion that religion is everyone's personal relationship with God. And so everyone should have their own religion, you know, because it should be very personal. So mine became Tonyism. Somewhere in Tonyism, in there, and out of my Buddhist stage, and I'm a Tai Chi instructor, been teaching that for about 30 years now. I was teaching Tai Chi and was living in Greenville, South Carolina. My brother gave me a book called Love is Letting Go of Fear by Gerald Jampolsky. Beautiful, beautiful little book.
It's the book I should have read first before attempting A Course in Miracles.
Talk
about that a little bit. He's a psychiatrist.
He is. He's a psychiatrist that uses the principles. He's one of the first that I know of that used the principles in his public practice and formed something called the Institute for Attitudinal Healing, and just did some marvelous, marvelous work. And I read this book.
Still out there in Tiburon, California, I believe.
Still out in Tiburon, it is. And as I read this book, and it says, based on A Course in Miracles, I'm going, wow, this book is just so dynamic. If this is based on A Course in Miracles, I want to find out what this Course in Miracles thing is. So I called my brother and thanked him, and someone asked me anything about the Course. He said, no. He said, I just like this book. Went to church next Sunday. I was going to a Unity Church in Greenville, South Carolina. I went to church the next Sunday, and they made an announcement saying that there's, I think, 4 or 5 people that would like to start a study group around the book called A Course in Miracles if anybody's interested. So